Governor, in 2008, you were awarded the Canterbury Medal by the foremost group in the country defending religious liberty, the Becket Fund. And at that dinner in New York, you said, freedom requires religion and religion requires freedom. Explain that to people.
Well, I think most people can understand the second part of that sentence, that religion requires freedom, because if there's not freedom to worship, of course, religion has a hard time breaking through to the hearts of people that aren't already religious. And so nations that have crushed religion, have crushed freedoms, are in often cases devoid of the kind of religious experience that our people deserve. But the other side of that expression, which is that freedom requires religion, that I hope people understand as you look at the history of this country. The freedom that was unleashed upon the world came as a result of individuals who recognized that our rights came from our Creator, not from government. And that observation led to a bursting forth on the world scene of freedom. Freedom for people not only to choose who would represent them in government, but freedom to live their lives as they wish, freedom to pursue happiness as they wish. So, and in one more sense I'll just note, and that is that I believe in democracies and free nations, that people have to have a sense of right and wrong, a purpose greater than self, in order for the society to work. I think de Tocqueville, in looking at America, recognized that in America there was a sense of right and wrong. And these things, I believe, are an essential part of free nations working effectively and having a productive and prosperous future.
The Catholic community in this country and people across the faith spectrum were outraged by President Obama's HHS mandate requiring abortifacients and contraceptives to be available to employees. It set off protests by the Catholic bishops and individual people of faith. What will you do as president about that HHS mandate?
Well, first of all, I'll continue to meet with Cardinal Dolan, who, by the way, is going to offer the benediction on the last evening of the Republican convention after my acceptance speech. So I'm making it very clear that the interest of religious freedom is something I support wholeheartedly. And we'll work with him and with others to assure that each piece of legislation we consider is thought also in terms of its impact on religious freedom and tolerance. This is a nation where our first freedom is the right to worship God as we choose. And any effort on the part of the federal government to intrude on religious liberty and to reject tolerance in favor of government mandate is a violation of that first freedom.
Should a religious liberty plank be inserted in the GOP platform?
You know, I haven't looked at the GOP platform, so I don't know what's there and what's not there, but I can tell you it is certainly part of my plank, if you will, for the platform that I run on, which is that I and Paul Ryan are committed to assuring that religions of whatever background should have the right to choose to worship God in the way they prefer, and that religions should not have imposed on them the dictates of a government.
I want to talk about you and your personal faith for a moment. A friend of yours, Ann Madsen, was quoted. She's a Bible scholar friend. She said, "Prayer is not a rote thing for Mitt Romney." When do you pray? And has prayer changed a decision you were making or affected your personal life in any way that you can recall?
Well, I believe that Providence has helped guide me in decisions I've made throughout my life. I pray every day, typically more than once. When I pray, I pray for guidance. It is not necessarily just a recitation of the concerns of each day, but rather asking for help and guidance and inspiration. And there have been important decisions. Perhaps the most important decisions a father faces relates to the children and how to help them in difficult times. I remember one son had a particularly challenging adolescence, and we were finding ourselves drifting further and further away from him. And our natural response was to criticize him, to correct him, to tell him what mistakes he was making. And after giving it a good deal of prayer and thought, the thought came to me to, instead of criticizing him, tell him how much we love him, how much we appreciate him, how much his life means to our lives. And that, as the poet said, made all the difference.
Do you feel God is calling you to this position, to be President of the United States?
You know, I don't believe that God gets heavily involved in politics. So I believe that God's work is to save souls and bring them to return to Him. At the same time, I believe that the interests of saving souls is associated as well with freedom. that freedom allows religion to bloom and grow, and that people draw closer to God by drawing closer to their respective faiths. So I don't pretend to have a religious mandate. I do, however, believe that a mandate of protecting freedom has a very significant beneficial impact on the ability of individuals to draw closer to divinity.
Let's shift gears for a moment. I want to talk about Paul Ryan, your running mate. Watching you all on the trail, and I've seen you in person once and now on television a number of times together, you seem rejuvenated. You seem more on point. Why not campaign more together? I know that defies the conventional wisdom. Is that going to be a pattern in these last 2 months of the campaign?
Well, we will surely have events that take us together and allow us to campaign to groups of people, and they get to see how we work together. And by the way, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I like working with Paul. We have different life experiences. We can each draw on those experiences to do a better job. At the same time, we have to do something that the president has really caused us to do, which is to have to raise an inordinate amount of money. This is the first post-Watergate president who doesn't have federal spending limits. He's brushed them aside. So to be competitive, we got to raise a lot of money, and that means Paul has to go one way, I go another, to get the funds necessary to keep up on the air.
This weekend, the president accused you of choosing Paul Ryan to lower your own tax rate. He said, well, this is so Mitt Romney can lower his rate to an effective 1% rate. Your reaction?
That's a little silly. Obviously, I pay a very substantial amount of money in taxes, also give substantially to charity, and well more than 20%, well more, goes to charity and taxes. And I'm not in this race, and I haven't contributed the money in my campaigns and the time in my campaigns to try and lower my tax bill. What I'm concerned about is helping people who don't have work be able to have a good job. I want folks to know that when they retire, their retirement is secure. I want moms and dads to know that their child is going to get an education that will lead to a good job. And I want people to know that if they get ill, they'll get health care that's good and affordable. Those are the reasons that I'm running for president. And sometimes what Peter says about Paul tells you more about Peter than Paul. So I don't know what the president's taxes are doing these days.
I want to talk about Paul Ryan, as I noticed he hasn't worn a tie since you made him your running mate. Is this a rule in the Romney camp? No ties for Ryan?
You know, Paul dresses the way he wants to dress. I give him no guidance whatsoever. But in our rallies, we're typically outdoors on a very hot and sunny day. And who the heck's going to wear a tie and a jacket on a hot day? Just guys like you. That's right, the commentators.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Let's talk about your opponents. Rudy Giuliani suggested that Vice President Biden may lack the mental, and I want to quote this correctly, the mental balance for the job. Do you agree with that appraisal?
You know, I don't focus on the personal characteristics of the president or the vice president. I instead run my campaign focused on their policy choices. And the policy choices they have made have quite clearly failed the American people. We have 23 million Americans out of work today. 1 out of 6 Americans has fallen into poverty. More than ever in our history are now poor in America. The gap between wealthy and poor has grown larger than any time in history. The president's policies have failed, and I step away from the discussions about his personality or character and that of the vice president. I know that's what they tend to do, but you know, this is a time to talk about getting America back on track, not a time to vilify fellow Americans.
They continue to pound you, and the president this week again brought up Medicare, he brought up taxes. If this economy turns around, what argument will you make to the American people? If the economy is off the table and it seems to rebound suddenly.
The economy continues to be the #1 issue for the American people, and whether there's a bump in the road that makes things a little better or whether there's a down bump, people know over the last 3.5, 4 years things have not been the way they should have been in this country. That's #1. And #2, looking at a program like Medicare, this is the health care program for seniors in America. People recognize that the president's plan to cut Medicare by $716 billion is going to hurt current retirees. And I think people understanding that, you're going to find, are going to say, you know what, we need to have a different direction in Washington, and not the kind of robbing of Medicare to pay for Obamacare that this president is putting in place.
Talk to me for a moment about the Latino vote. The Catholic bishops have spent an inordinate amount of time concerned about immigration and caring for immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented. The president recently signed this executive order delaying deportations for 1.7 million young Latinos. Will you repeal that executive order or leave it in place?
You know, the president actually proposed or said during his campaign that he would put in place legislation that dealt with all immigration issues, in particular illegal immigration and those that have come here illegally, either by themselves or with their children. And yet, after 3.5 years, he just didn't do that. If I become president, I will put in place permanent legislation. I will establish not just a temporary pathway, but a clear understanding of what the course will be for those that have come here through no fault of their own, through their parents, for their parents, and for others that want to come here legally. And I've laid out the plans for my immigration proposals. These will be not a temporary fix, but a permanent fix that will clarify what the future is for people who've come into this country.
I want to return to your faith for a moment. As a bishop in your church, you helped immigrants who were new to the country. You helped couples make ends meet and balance their budgets. You helped unemployed people find work. How did that position as a leader in your church prepare you for this job you seek?
Well, there's no question but that being a pastor, if you will, and a small p pastor, where you're working with people of all different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different economic circumstances, some employed, some unemployed, as you work with those people and try and provide for them a positive path forward in their lives, you understand the very real concerns and pains that people have, the struggles that they have. You want to help them, and that's one of the things that draws me into this race. I want to help the hundreds of millions of Americans who want to see a brighter and more prosperous future, and I think I know how to do that. And I've laid out the plans that would get America doing what it needs to do to give people good jobs and more take-home pay again.
What is the worst part of this for you personally? This has got to be difficult. Running around the country, today you were in 2 different states, 3 different states, event after event after event. What is the worst part of that experience?
Well, the best part is the privilege of running for the presidency of the United States.
I didn't ask you the best part.
And meeting all the people of the country. The worst part, I guess just a different hotel every night. I probably sleep in almost never in the same place twice. And so you get used to different beds, different pillows, different blankets, different air conditioners, different fans. And sometimes your sleep is not as comfortable as you might like it to be. But the best part, of course, is the people, the energy you get from them.
Tell me, what are your hopes as you go forward at this moment? What do you need to accomplish at the Republican National Convention? Where do you think you haven't connected yet with the American people or with a block of voters?
Well, most people have only seen me in 30-second ads, and most of the ads they've seen have been produced by the president and his campaign and supporters, not by my campaign.
Less than flattering.
So they have a less than flattering image of me, and they'll have a little more time to get to know Ann, my wife, maybe my sons, my daughters-in-law, perhaps some grandkids, other people who've known me over my life, and they'll have a fuller picture. They'll either like me more or like me less, but they'll know who I am, I think, in a way that will be helpful to their decision.
Before I let you go, you said at that dinner I mentioned in 2008, I'm not an enormously religious person. Ann taught me the power of faith. How so?
Did I say that exactly? That's an unusual thing coming from me because I am a very religious person. But Ann is also a religious person with a great deal of faith and confidence in the future, and confidence that that things will work to our eternal benefit if we abide by the covenants we have with God, with each other, if we do our best to live a good life. We've made mistakes. Heaven knows I've made mistakes. Things I've confessed before God and repented of, but nonetheless we try and get better. I was once told that the difference between a sinner and a saint is not where they are on the ladder toward heaven, but instead what direction they're headed. And I'm trying to head towards the north.